Hello, I'm Clint Walker, and this is Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. And today we're going to talk about the value of personal enjoyment. Many of you are probably familiar with the idea of the value of personal enjoyment. Those of you who are not, those words, that phrase, is the answer to all the money that your seller is not getting back that they spend on, like very specific, very taste specific, or things that they do to their house. For instance, you spend $200,000 on your in-ground pool. You get $80,000 in value out of the resale. That $120,000 difference is the value of personal enjoyment. You make a 10 by 10 addition onto the back of your kitchen to make a breakfast nook. You spend $200,000 on that. It adds about maybe $80,000 to the value of your house, or maybe less. The difference that you don't get back is the value of personal enjoyment. So the whole subject is kind of like how you make your seller feel better about money that they're not losing, but that they are investing in their own enjoyment. And you can analogize this by using things like vacations, gym memberships, lots of things, memberships to the country club, lots of things that a person does that they get like real value out of, because these things, vacations and club memberships and health spa memberships, things like that benefit a person's life, can sort of financially benefit them in other sort of intangible ways. Like there's pretty good research out there about how stress relief relates to medical bills, or the lack of medical bills, and things like that. So things have real value to a person, but they don't necessarily amount to market value when you think about selling a piece of real estate that needs to appeal to a mass audience. As you put money into things that are specific to your taste, it's only you who's getting value out of it. And so your value sort of needs to be in this sort of happiness factor or enjoyment. So that is the value of personal enjoyment. This is probably not going to be a very long video because I'm already running out of extra things to say about the value of personal enjoyment. But it is real, and I personally, I've done this in my own property. I've put money into my own property that I knew up front, no sort of investment calculation was going to make it make sense. And so the only test of whether I want to spend that money must be, am I going to get enough personal enjoyment out of this money? I'm investing this money basically in myself. Am I going to get enough out of this in happiness to make it something I want to do? Because there's no financial return on it otherwise. And I ultimately chose to do that. Now, there are a lot of factors that go into even how much personal enjoyment that you have. And I think the easiest way to talk about this is in-ground pools, because they're very popular right now. They've been very popular since COVID. There was a brief moment during COVID where demand became so great and the pool companies were still using old pricing that you could put in a pool and make money on the resale of your house. Like make money on just the pool. The pool will cost you $80,000. You get $120 out of the market if you sold the house right then in that short window of time. But it didn't last long. The pool companies caught on pretty quick. They raised their prices. So now we're pretty much back to the old expectation of, you put in a pool, you spend a massive amount of money, and you get a fraction of value on return. Sometimes, if you make a bad decision and put in an expensive pool on a very inexpensive property, maybe you got a buyer pool. Well, maybe you've got a group of buyers. I don't want to confuse all the terminology. Maybe you've got a group of buyers who don't want in-ground pools, can't afford to maintain in-ground pools, and so you could add a pool to your house, spend a lot of money doing it, but by virtue of having added an item that requires expensive maintenance, you could detract from the appeal or value of your property. But that's a different topic. So, with the exception of that time during COVID, when prices to install pools were low, demand for pools was high, for the most part, whenever we or our clients are installing an item like that, or doing something, I'm going to talk about pools, so we're going to stick to pools. An item like that, our advice to them is typically don't expect to get everything back out of it that you're putting into it. You need to do a calculation as to, are you going to enjoy this pool enough to invest that in yourselves? Maybe it is. I mean, I know when I calculated mine, there was sort of a well, if I'm going to put in this pool, is it going to save me? Am I going to take one less expensive trip per year? Okay, even that doesn't really touch the expense of putting in a pool anymore. But that's sort of the calculation that you make. I read one of the sources that an appraiser can use to get a value for a thing like a pool, and we don't have this available to us for every single item that a person might do, but in-ground pools are one where this data is available to appraisers, not to agents. But we can use national surveys of appraisers where some independent company has asked all 35,000 appraisers in the country how much they give to an in-ground pool. They aggregate that data, they come up to some sort of common occurrence, which statistic, and say nationally appraisers are adding about X amount for an in-ground pool, and it's usually a percentage, so it kind of goes up and down with the value of the property. But part of that calculus is that appraisers across the country seem to take into consideration how severe your winters are, or how long lasting they are, which makes a lot of sense. Because if you have an extremely long winter, say you're up in Wisconsin maybe, and you got long winters, you only have a few months of swimming weather, the value of a pool goes down a lot, because maybe 8 or 9 or 10 months a year nobody's using that pool. So you got an expensive thing. It's going to cost probably a similar amount up there to put in the pool as it does in Tennessee. But for 3/4 of the year, there's no using it. And take that, compare that to somewhere like Florida, where maybe 3/4 of the year you can use your pool, and you get a lot more utility out of it, a lot more opportunity for personal enjoyment. Consequently, for that reason, and for other factors like maybe not having such rocky soil, or maybe just a higher demand for them, you see a lot more pools in Florida than you probably do in Wisconsin. So in Tennessee, especially Middle Tennessee, as our winters have sort of been getting milder. This year has been weird. All through Memorial Day, we usually open our pools, but all through May this year was really cool. So if you didn't have a heated pool, you probably didn't use it a lot during May. But in Middle Tennessee, as our winters get more mild, maybe pool demand goes up. Maybe it goes up for other reasons. And so the market can start appreciating those more, and what might follow are higher values or higher return on pools. But for whatever you don't get back, any time for any improvement that you want to make to your property, little additions, converting attics, finishing out areas over bonus rooms, building exterior like detached auxiliary dwelling units, which may be a little studio in your backyard or a finished space above the garage, putting in turf, even fences. There's really no end to the list of improvements that a person could do that might be exceptions to what the majority of buyers in the market might want. And anytime you get into that realm of doing things that might only appeal to you and your taste and your use, you start to get into the realm of making investments in your own personal enjoyment. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the calculus is your own, and nobody can really make that decision for you. So I hope that helps. It's kind of a very abstract topic, but I found that even the terminology and maybe having some ideas about how to explain the terminology to clients is helpful to them to sort of wrap their head around that and maybe be more comfortable with, maybe they've already spent the money before they ever had anybody tell them about the value of personal enjoyment, and that's just an investment in yourself. And so, they're sort of struggling with the idea of what they're not getting back on the back end. So maybe that helps in talking to them and educating them. So if we can ever help you with an appraisal in that regard, maybe make that explanation for you and keep some heat off of you, we're happy to do that. You can find us at appraiserpool.com. Where we can appraise that house with the pool, measure that house with the pool, or just give you a consultation on something like this. So I appreciate you watching as always, and we will catch you next week.